Hey Spurs fans, welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Roundtable powered by Project Spurs. I am Jeff Garcia, and joining the side next to me is Chelsea Torres, who doesn't know her own Twitter handle, we discovered before taping the show, and the new guy, Winston Harris. Winston, welcome to the show, and by the way, thanks for making us look bad, Winston. Really appreciate that. Man. You're looking very dapper.
I didn't get the memo to dress really nice today.
You didn't email us or what?
No, I thought it was a job interview, so I just...
Well, anyway. Well, the Spurs are technically at the halfway point, at least according to the NBA schedule, with the All-Star break here. And sitting with a record of, I believe, 34 and 19. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the way the Spurs fans expected the Spurs to be standing at this point of the season. Winston, you're the new guy, so we'll let you have the first take.
Yeah, I thought that 34-19 is probably not where they wanted to be, but I don't think necessarily is where they don't really care. Like, the regular season is kind of like a layover for them. They just really want to make it into the playoffs.
You know, he's saying that maybe they shouldn't care, but in this season, in the NBA West, maybe they should care because a loss here or loss there equals 7th seed, 4th, 3rd, or maybe out of the postseason.
I completely agree, and I agree with what Winston has to say. I don't know if that's not necessarily don't care, but it's almost like the regular season is like a nuisance for the Spurs. They focus more onto the playoffs, of course, as everybody knows. The Spurs are kind of playing a little sluggish right now, and I think with how deep the West is, it's also hard because the Spurs cannot seem to win all of the good games against all the great teams right now.
Right.
So.
Well, you know, right now I believe they're sitting at what, the 6th spot or the 7th spot? The 7th spot right now. And like I've said before in many past shows, you don't want to be a 1 through 4 team having the possibility of facing a San Antonio in that first round. But this begs a question. Let's just say they do finish 5 through 8, somewhere in there. Can they win 2 road series against a top 4 Western Conference team?
Well, I think if they were to have their first round against the Warriors, I think that'd be kind of great, only for the Spurs because I think they're kind of the only team that can really take down the Warriors. If they can shut down that perimeter shooting, I think I've said that before, I think the Spurs will be fine.
You know, Winston, you know, she brings up a good point. Golden State Warriors have been on fire this season. Spurs have been only one of 2 teams that have beaten them in their home court. They're better defensively this year. Do a Warriors team, maybe a Blazers team, a Dallas team worry about you?
I don't see them doing anything in the playoffs. They're more of they're kind of like the Phoenix Suns back in the day with the Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. They won a lot of games in the regular season, but come postseason, they don't really have the team to do anything. Andrew Bogut is questionable, his health, of course, and down low. I don't see him matching up very well against Tim Duncan, Aaron Baines, Thiago Splitter. I just don't see that in a 7-game series.
Right. Pop has always said if you're going to win in the postseason, you're going to have to win in the road eventually.
Exactly.
So, you know, 34-19, you know, we'll definitely see what the Spurs do once the All-Star break is over. But just kind of leaves the question, what do they have to do to have a strong push towards the end? Do they need to make a trade with the trade deadline coming up soon? Do they need to just steady the ship? What do they have to do, Winston?
I think they just need to kind of buckle down. Like I said before, they're kind of just lollygagging through the regular season, just trying to kind of make it to the playoffs just because they know that's their comfortable spot. Basically, their lack of focus has led to statistical things like 3-point shooting is kind of down.
And not to mention the injury impact. I mean, how huge is that?
Well,
Chelsea?
and that's the thing. As long as the Spurs can stay healthy, which right now it seems like almost everybody is, but I think if they can stay healthy and if they focus more again, you know, just kind of finishing out the regular season and focusing on the playoffs, which they normally do. And I don't want to say that they are saving themselves for the playoffs. I felt like Tony Parker kind of did that a little bit last year, but that's kind of what I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they're doing this year. They're just kind of saving themselves.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Tony Parker because we're going to look back at the first half of the season. Who has been this team's MVP? You might say Tim Duncan. Obviously, he's in the All-Star game. You know, we'll talk about him in a while. But there could also be kind of an inverse thought of this. What about TP? What about Parker? What about Kawhi? What about maybe a guy like Danny Green?
I actually think Corey Joseph was instrumental in many of the victories that the Spurs have.
So you have him as your first half MVP for the Spurs?
I mean, my first half would be Tim Duncan, no doubt, because he was just consistently the statistical leader.
I was about to get up and walk off right now. You just said Corey Joseph was the MVP.
But, I mean, if you want to just take a second look at it, Corey Joseph was really strong.
He's a big contender for MVP.
But who would you, wow, you said Tim Duncan. Yeah. Would you agree?
I would say Tim Duncan. I think Tim Duncan, Danny Green, and Corey Joseph are top contenders.
Right.
So
I would have to think the inverse. For me personally, I think what have the Spurs have done without an injured Tony Parker. What's the old saying? The Spurs go as Tony Parker goes.
Right.
You've heard it in the postseason. Last season, Russell Westbrook says, we cut off the head of the snake, the Spurs wither. Okay, granted, the Spurs have got wins here and there, but they haven't put together that strong winning streak that we've seen.
They haven't. They've been struggling a lot right now.
So maybe the question is, we're seeing the Spurs struggling without 100% Tony Parker. Could possibly the inverse be said, that he is the MVP? Without him, the Spurs kind of muddle through, as we've seen.
I think Kawhi Leonard actually was. I think they've done worse without Kawhi Leonard than with Tony Parker. I think they were 9-9 without Kawhi. So I think you could make the argument that the Spurs are not as strong without Kawhi than with Tony Parker.
You know what? Somebody on the floor has to lead that team. And I still go back. I say, if we had a healthy Tony Parker, I think right now he would probably be your MVP of the team.
I agree. It's just I think right now it's been hard for him to do any of the playmaking. He's kind of been struggling just overall right now. But I agree with what you're saying. I definitely agree with what Winston's saying with Kawhi.
Yeah. And I'm not going to walk off the stage if you said it, Corey. But, you know, later on today, the Spurs will have one lone representative in New York City for the All-Star game, and that is Tim Duncan, making his 15th appearance. And he's kind of come full circle now. He started his first one in New York City, and now possibly his last one, we don't know, in New York City. But he wasn't voted in by the fans. He actually probably wasn't even entered in through the coaches, through the reserves. He's there because players like Anthony Davis, LaMarcus Aldridge were hurt. So he's kind of a replacement. Is he really deserving of that All-Star spot? Is this a situation that's just a Lifetime Achievement Award? How do you think? Do you think he really deserved it?
I think he does. I think he is actually top 10 in points, rebounds, and player efficiency among centers in the NBA. So, I mean, he's coming in and night out and making a case that he's still one of the top centers at 38 years old in the NBA.
He's the big fundamental. Of course he deserves to be there. I think the funny part is, though, is that he doesn't even really care to be there. He's more focused just on the game itself, and he's just like, well, you know, I guess if I have to be here, I'll be here.
I mean, but look, I would have been okay either way. If he didn't get it, great. You know, if he got it, even better. He doesn't care, like you mentioned. But you know, if you're going to look at stats, isn't that what we base these All-Star Game players on? Stats. Statistically, DeMarcus Cousins is having a better season than Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is leading the team. Yes, the Spurs, because they've been injury hit right now, but they're on that 7th seed right now, 6th, 7th seed in that area. You know, I can't think of any other player deserve it other than DeMarcus Cousins. So, do you think Cousins should have gotten it over Tim Duncan?
I think you can make a case he deserves it. It kind of does go back to you saying that Tim Duncan's just so great that I guess Steve Kerr felt that he just put him in that spot.
And Kerr, I see what you did. You're trying to run this guy to the ground in case you got to meet him in the first round. Chelsea? I
completely agree. I mean, he's like, if I can bring down Tim Duncan's power play a little bit, then first round should be easier on the Warriors.
Now, look, Spurs fans, I'm not saying that Tim Duncan should not be in New York City. I mean, I think he does. But, you know, when you're looking at his body of work, you're looking at everything, it just feels more, I hate to say it, like kind of like throwing him a bone, like, yeah, big man, we know you've done it before. Here you go, get on there. And he's not the only one, too. Dirk is also on there because of the injury hit to the West reserves.
Yeah, I think Steve Kerr is kind of just getting the, what would be the word?
I guess like trying to, again, Kerr, I know what you're doing. Chelsea's
we know your tricks.
We know your tricks. Chelsea's going to go back to you once you come here to San Antonio in the second half of the season. But no, Winston, Chelsea, I agree. You know, Tim Duncan is deserving. It is a Lifetime Achievement Award. And let's hope that he puts on a good show later on today in New York City. Well, those are our thoughts on the Spurs at the halfway point, as well as our thoughts on who the team MVP is, and of course, Tim Duncan being an All-Star once again for the 15th time. But go out to ProjectSpurs.com, leave all your thoughts and comments on anything Spurs. Seriously, anything. I mean, we're just loading it up with content for you from Winston and from Chelsea. But, you know, and the rest of the crew at Project Spurs. And again, don't forget to go out to News4SanAntonio.com and Fox29SanAntonio.com for everything else Spurs. But for Chelsea Torres and Winston Harris, who, again, made us look completely bad. Look at that, I'm wearing jeans right now. Look at this.
Wearing jeans.
Look at this, and he's all dapper.
Sorry.
I'm Jeff Garcia. Thanks again for watching this episode of the Spurs Roundtable.